Hello and welcome to Making Spaces, the podcast, a podcast about making space both literally and figuratively for yourself and others. I'm Sarah Heath, and this is my co-host,
Josie Jimenez. No hesitation here.
I don't know why I had to think about who I was. Guys,
Who am I?
Who am I? The next human.
Who are you?
Who are you? Who wants to know? There's so many questions. The human that we like to start every one of our seasons with is the Kevin Garcia.
Meow meow.
A friend of the pod, or what do they say?
Back again.
Back again. We wanted to start out our third season with one of our favorite people. And we wanted to make sure that that was you, like consistency, right, Joes?
Listen, that's the best.
Mm-hmm.
So our
Yeah, it really just did work out that way.
It's true. But we are really excited. Should we give any sort of teasers about, we've put some interviews in the can already. Should we preview those?
Ooh.
In the can, is that how you say it? I feel like you're making fun of me.
No, I'm saying ooh as in this is exciting.
Yeah. Should we? Well, one of them is your friend Brenda.
Brenda Murray Davies.
From God is Gray.
God is Gray on Instagram.
Peter from Bethany's Kids, which is a really cool organization. We have got Halima from Rosecrans. We have got Savannah from it's called
The Juice
Edit. And we've got others that are hopefully going to set up their times. I'm really excited about it. But we had to start with you, Kevin, of course. Our question that we always start every episode with is this. What is one of your favorite spaces and why, as of right now? Because I know it's changed a little bit.
Yes, because they used to be my co-working space, but there's what co-working space? No one can co-work now. So I would say presently my favorite space is my meditation space over it. Like it's where in my living room I have my altar set up and my yoga mat in front of it, and I'm gonna scooch it over a little bit, and I'm actually gonna paint a wall accent to make it like really set it apart, make it fancy, give it some depth.
Ooh.
And I'm picking up a table on Sunday, a West Elm walnut finish round table. Thanks Facebook Marketplace. Listen, Facebook Marketplace, $137.
Ooh. It sounds
get it.
Incredible place. And is it, how often do you go to your meditation? That sounds like I'm calling you out, but how often?
Every morning for about 30 minutes to an hour or so. Doing meditation and yoga, and just, it's beautiful. It's got plants. It's got little, my little statues, my little crystals. It's great. And it also just like looks out the window into the neighborhood. So like, it's a cute little thing, cute time.
So this might be, I don't think nothing's too personal in our friendship, but perhaps a difficult thing to talk about. But in that space, do you still have photos of your family members that passed away this year?
Yeah, I actually have an ofrenda set up over here. I'm gesturing like the people who are listening to this can see it.
Like the camera moves. We don't have camera people.
Over
not yet. Over yonder. Yeah, I do. I have my ofrenda set up over there with my grandparents and my dad and Rachel, and we say hey, we put out libations, It's it for me, having the ofrenda makes grief a lot easier. But now because I have like a much bigger space in my house, like the ofrenda is separate from like my yoga altar. So
got it.
Which like is nice because now I'm not thinking about death every time I'm working on my shit.
Yeah, I love that as a Mexican as well. I love the idea of an ofrenda. I've been avoiding it.
Oh my gosh.
Pictures of my deceased ones.
Dude, when I tell you, like, I think it's been really powerful for me because it allowed me to just like become okay. Like it just became like, because the grief was coming up a little bit more frequently, and it's just like, okay, it's coming, I can see it, and then I'm moving away. So it's like, and also I'm also remembering, like, I feel like there's a fear of saying like, I don't want to forget this person. But I also don't want to feel it.
You don't want to cocoa it.
Yeah. And so it's like, for me, it brings it all to the surface so that I can just see it clearly and give it some compassion. And then also treat my grandparents like, and my family like they're still here and part of like my ancestors and part of my circle, my, what do they call it? A communion of saints, if you will.
Oh, actually, that is a great. So Josie and I this Wednesday did our Ash Wednesday service. And it's interesting because people are like, why is mortality? You know, you said, oh, I like to work where I can see my dead ancestors' death. But the truth is like, I feel like the way when we are like honest about death and honest about like that we're only here for so long, there is this gift in that. And I think both of you coming from Hispanic traditions do a better job of that. I feel like the predominant Caucasian model is act like death never happens.
Yeah, that's like whiteness and colonialism. That's what they did. Like, it's like we only venerate life. We only venerate life, and we don't think about death. So like even the saints, like, you know, we only think about their eternal soul. We don't think about the fact that martyrdom happened. Their bodies were destroyed. And then I would say a lot of like for our Mexican heritage, like that the remembering and honoring of the dead is, I think, indigenous resiliency shining through. Because the Dia de los Muertos and even the Virgin of Guadalupe is like truly indigenous resilience kind of morphing into the status quo in order to survive. So it's really cool to see. And it's also cool now as like an adult, like trying to decolonializing my faith. I'm allowed to like see them alongside Jesus as one of my ancestors. It's really fucking cool.
As one of my ancestors. Oof.
Yeah, it's interesting how colonized my parents' faith is, because growing up we weren't allowed to have skulls, anything. Like back when you're in middle school, you have the cute little pink skull with a bow or whatever.
Oh my god, no skulls.
Sacrilege.
Demonic.
Nope. Yes. And it's really been a hard time, and my family's been pretty fortunate in not experiencing a lot of death until recently. And in therapy, my therapist was like, why don't you want to deal with grief? And so I scared her a little bit with like all the little clocks that run in my head, all the little gears. It's like, well, this is connected to this, and if he's dead, then this and this and this and this. And she's like, okay, I understand. But it's like that idea of like, I've never been taught to deal with grief. It's like, they're in heaven. That's it. You're done. That's it. They're in heaven.
Can I tell you something like weird that happened recently? Yeah. So my grandfather passed recently, since very, very sad times. And my mom, who has always been somebody who I always think, I'm like, I don't know if you actually deal with your grief very well. In fact, I'm pretty sure you don't. And then additionally, but like it always seemed very, very fast, and I've never really questioned it. And then recently I was talking to her and she said, yep, you know, I had a dream last night and Papa came to see me, told me he was okay, and I just know he was okay. And I'm like, really? Like, you just take that as truth? She's like, yeah, it's happened every single time somebody passes in the family. I have a dream, like they come visit me in my dreams. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Are you telling? I'm like, Mom.
She's never told you.
She's never told me this. And I'm just like, okay, now it makes sense because the same thing happens to me. So it's like, I'm like, word. Okay, well, maybe I'm more of a medium than I thought.
Yeah, my mom does not have that. She at my cousin's funeral, not to call it my mom because she's a victim of her colonized faith, but sorry, Mom, you're not listening anyways. She was hysterical when they went to go cremate him at the end. She was absolutely hysterical. And then everybody's like, oh, Ryan's
Catholic
like, oh,
family,
mom, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, Christian, Pentecostal.
So what was the deal with
God?
What's the deal with burning bodies?
It was just the end. It wasn't that it wasn't the cremation that was the problem. It was just like, you know, and Josie's mom might have how am I going to say this nicely? She might have a little bit of a history, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Josie, of taking over moments, experiences.
Center of attention.
Okay, you said it.
Which, you know, relatable, no problem, understand.
You are not your mother, but keep going.
Right. But she was hysterical, and Ryan was like, "Oh, your mom is really feeling this." And I was like, "Nah, dude. She is thinking that my cousin is in hell, and I cannot stand for this." And we had this conversation, and she did think
Wait,
that
she thinks her
because he
cousin's
did
in...
not.
Oh, no. That's very
He
unfortunate.
was worried about it because he didn't go to church, and she's like, "I didn't do my job of saving him." And I was like,
Oh,
"Mom."
honey.
And it was like this conversation that I had to have with my dad, where I was like, he didn't like that you guys were judgmental. So maybe, he's the reason
Maybe
he
he was
didn't go
already
to
in
church,
hell.
but
Maybe he was already in hell. I don't know.
right. But then I had to like tell my mom, it was that same experience of like, maybe I'm a medium. I was like, "Mom, I have a really like deep piece about my cousin, because we had these really insightful conversations before he passed, and like he was in a really good spot in his life. He had made amends, and he was like at the height of his empathy or whatever. And I have peace, Mom." After that, she was a little bit more calm, but just that initial like hysteria of like the evangelical, like, "Oh my gosh, they're not in they're in hell because I didn't save them. I didn't take them to church."
Dead ass. When I was a missionary, I had a friend of mine who she converted from Judaism to Christianity, and she said, dead ass, "I know my Jewish grandmother is in hell. Jesus told me."
Jesus told her?
The Jews don't believe in hell, so I don't know what you're
That's my thing. I was just like, I don't, and I'm sitting here like, and then that's right after she told me this beautiful story about how she reconnected with her grandmother even after she became a Christian. But the grandma's in hell. I'm like, that was the end of it.
Damn, dude.
And she's like, "Yeah, I just know."
What the heck are you talking about?
So
yeah.
Here is so Josie, you had this question with your dad, right? About like whole conversation with your dad, and not to stereotype your conversation with your parents, but oftentimes your dad is the one who's a little more balanced, a little more reasonable.
A little more balanced.
Yes. He sees some nuance. Okay. He was able to hold space for, maybe I don't know all the answers. Maybe it's okay that...
Yes, my dad's very much of like, I believe that everybody has one final opportunity, which is very Mormon, right? Like the Mormon idea of like, you come to face with God and you only go to hell if you deny him to his face. Thanks, Ryan, for the...
Wait, is that true?
Lesson.
Mormons believe that we get one more chance?
Most Mormons don't really believe that anybody goes to hell. You have to reject God to his face.
Sick. I want that.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, I'll borrow that. That sounds great. It's literally like, "Do you want to come to a party?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so who would reject a party?
Exactly. So my dad's very much in that vein, especially at my cousin's funeral. We had a beautiful conversation, and then my mother was in hysterics. It was a very fun time for me,
Oh.
Have you in your history, so you knew exactly what he was talking about when he was talking about having like a space set aside. Have you in your history, Josie, have you ever had a space, a mantle? Because you've gone through some losses. Have you ever, how do you make space for that in your own, both of you? This is a great question. How do we make space for grief and for recognizing and for all these things? This is a great way to start the season 3, but let's get deep. Let's talk about death.
But also, I think it's really appropriate too, like with what we've been through in the past year. How many people, like Lent? We're here in the middle of Lent. How many people have died of COVID, including my grandfather? God rest their souls. And so, I think it's absolutely appropriate to talk about grief and death up front, because who has not been touched by it? Josie, do you have any rituals or any practices around grief, death, etc.?
It's actually really funny. I was just
that initial reaction you had.
I was just talking to Ryan, my partner, in case anybody doesn't know that. And I was like, I think I need a grief retreat. I think I need to just go away with my best friend and just cry for weeks. Because my cousin died in November. No, it was October. It was a long, I don't even remember.
Yeah, but it was so her cousin was murdered.
Year.
It wasn't just murdered in an atrocious and very public way. He was run over by
make sure you put a trigger warning on that.
Yeah, we will put a trigger warning on this episode.
Everybody. Yeah.
We got real deep real quick.
It was
horrid.
incredibly traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And family drama arises and all this stuff. And so during that time, I was Aunt Josie, because all of my cousins' kids in this house.
Oh yeah, I'm Uncle
They
Kevin.
only really knew me and Ryan. We were the people that were interacting with them before this happened. And so I was at this house every day, just like being the Aunt Josie, and I was answering all these like big questions and like, oh, where's my dad? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what your mother told you about heaven. I don't know what's happening. And so I didn't really have space to grieve then. And so now I just fill my time with not feeling grief, working on it in therapy, because I think it's just like this downward spiral of I have an incredible anxiety around death because of religious trauma.
Right.
Religious trauma.
That's real. Like, you're not the first person to tell me. I have actually a couple of people who I've talked to who actively say, I'm still afraid of the rapture. I'm still afraid of what might happen after I die.
Terrified.
You
And I'm
still
over
are,
here.
Josie. You still are.
You know,
Yes.
I think, for Lent, you should give up the fear of hell.
I don't even believe in hell.
It's
And
like the
yet-
last
I just
thing
fear
to go.
death.
Oh, why? That's the thing. I'm not afraid of death anymore. And I think that is, I don't know. I mean, like, chalk it up to a couple different things. I've had a couple lovely metaphysical experiences, both completely sober and with the use of psychedelics. Dead ass. And so, like, it's, I don't fear whatever comes next anymore. And I think because of that, I think it's also because, like, I've considered, like, if nothing happens, I won't know. So it's like, okay. The worst that could happen is I will never know what happens. And then, of course, like, it'll be like, Ram Dass said in a recording, someone said, like, death is just like taking off a really tight shoe.
What the fuck? I love that.
I mean, Josie, when you think about death, what is it that is a fear for you in that?
I actually just recently wrote an essay about this that I planned on publishing, but then I was like, this is kind of dark. I don't know about
Listen,
putting this
live
out
Also,
there.
can we just ask how Josie has so many hours in her day? Because this chick gets so much, and then you just wrote an essay. I just recently wrote an essay. Keep going.
I'm only working full time, paying my bills, producing content, and writing,
and
delightfully dark
making jewelry,
essays,
and helping the church do things,
and also
helping
loving my
editing this
husband,
podcast,
and, like,
and then
having an
whatever.
active sex
And
life.
then I also wrote an essay. Oh, also I have chronic illness where I'm in chronic pain. But your mom is right. You have achieved nothing.
Nothing in my life.
Anyway,
I'm
sorry.
worthless.
You're making the rest of us feel bad. But keep going.
So all of that is avoiding grief and anxiety, right? Anyways, I don't recommend overworking yourself, everybody. It's not great.
Nope.
But I view death as like this storm cloud that always hangs around me, like this black cloud that sometimes, like, it's like this visual is literally like it comes down and it just like overcomes my eyes. This happens a lot when I'm trying to go to sleep, and then it's like this, like I wake up, like, and then it's like death is my best friend who really wants me and who's like trying to instill this fear in me, so I just keep going. That's what I feel like it is, like this motivator, like your dark best friend who's like, bitch, have you been doing anything? Or
Interesting. I love that.
It's this anxiety. Yeah. And I fear death. I think the fear comes from, I don't know what's next, and I do have doubts about God, like any normal person. Like, does God exist? Am I wrong? And then it comes down to, like, did I live my life pursuing love and God and my neighbor for nothing? Did I live this incredibly difficult life of choosing love for nothing?
Such an
so selfish. There's a control issues happening here.
No, that was my first, like, when I was going through my first deconstruction portion, was around, okay, if hell's not real, then what the fuck was Jesus for? And if Jesus wasn't really the Son of God, what did Jesus die for? And if hell's not real, does that mean that everyone goes to heaven? Or what if there isn't even a heaven? What if all of this is all just a bunch of shit? And that's, like, what threw me into, like, existential crisis of just, like, what if it's all what? And it was kind of like looking back at it was a lot of regret on the first part of my life, which was like, you mean I was doing all that for nothing? And then, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if that's because you guys, heaven was the prize. In evangelical, this is what you're going for. Ignore everything that's around you now. It's all about what's next. So if there's no punishment, then why was I doing all this thing? It's like the kid who always gets the sticker when they're good, then they never learn to just be good for good's sake. And
but not even that. Like, it's like, no, like I couldn't even see it as that. It's just like I mean, it was coming to the realization that I was lied to. And it's like, okay, what else have I been lied to about? And so like it's like I was lied to about God. God might not even be real, and yet I have this sense that maybe God or love or spirit or something might be animating this whole thing, and I might want to be okay with it because what if I'm wrong? And then it's a whole to do, and it can consume, you know, especially for those of us for whom like life and death was like, I mean, on Halloween. I went to. Did y'all go to hell houses on Halloween?
In one of those without knowing.
We're not allowed.
I was in a hell house. I was.
Do you know what a hell house is? You were the party girl in the hell house.
I was the party girl in the hell house.
Wow.
I didn't even know what it was.
Chi Omega, baby. But yeah,
I love that you know what sorority I was in. By the way, I love that you know that.
Absolutely.
Frat boy.
Never forget. You know who I was in?
No, I don't. Have you ever told me? Were you a Phi Tau?
No. Sigma, baby. Sigma Phi Epsilon.
Oh, I did know that because I know your handshake, which you're a balanced man.
How do you know my handshake? Did I show you when I was drunk?
I dated a boy who was a Sig Ep, and when he was drunk, I learned the handshake.
Wow, a betrayer. I don't care.
God, I'm so anti-Greek life here.
No, like, okay, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. The person I am now would not join Greek life because at the time, I will say I was really desperate for a friend group and I needed a place to belong and land. And ironically, though, I had a really positive experience with Greek life because
I did too.
Greek life taught me that there was no wrong way to be a dude. And they voted me in. I was like the first or second openly queer person to be in my frat. So it was like kind of revolutionary, but also
that's pretty much it.
Oh, girl, I had to like figure out, I had to finance it. I'm like, girl, I don't have money. I had to ask an older brother who was like well connected and wealthy. I was like, I know these white boys have money.
Sugar daddy.
For me, it was a great experience of being different and yet seeming like you're the same and getting to like help people ask better questions. And my sorority sisters were incredible. And it was a wonderful experience. But let's not talk about that. I was in a hell house. Doesn't matter. For a Baptist church. Keep going. You were talking about Halloween.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's like the images that we had instilled in us as like young people. So it makes sense. Like our bodies have been afraid for a long, long time. And so I think the work of, oddly enough, contemplating death a little bit and contemplating the ideas of like, you know, like energy and like the ideas of energy and as endless love and endless, like changing our minds about what we think is doing all this. And again, I think for me, it's those metaphysical experiences along with the psychedelic experiences that have led me, based on my experience, into saying, I think that whatever is animating this whole thing is wonderful and wants us to have a good time.
Wants us to have a good time.
No, honestly, like that's the whole thing. I think like the point is to be happy. And the idea of hell gets in the way of me being happy. So I dismiss it.
Yeah. I think that's what death kind of feels like to me. I think I wrote this in the essay, but I'll publish it soon. Don't worry, everybody. Don't worry.
In the newsletter.
It was this concept of like, I live a more beautiful life because I fear something that could take it at any point. Like I always
gratefulness
live with this
for
urgency
something
of like, I gotta live now. I gotta love now. I gotta do this now because tomorrow I might not be there. I could crash right now. I could die in a plane crash. I could at any moment death could come for me. And what testament do I want to live in my life? What like ripple do I want to leave? Like if I'm just a drop in this ocean, what do I want my effect to be? Whether or not people remember my name, what do I want people to have?
And I think like that is
that
a
totally
drive.
Makes sense.
That is a drive I have for myself, if I'm being honest. And I think I'm finally to a point where I think that I'm making the impact I want to on the world, which is why I guess I feel at peace, because I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about in The Art of Living how eternal life has nothing to do with the spiritual aspect, but about the fact that like in whatever way you pass on love, that's how like you live forever. Whenever somebody remembers something you taught them or a way that you loved them, you're living forever. So like this, whenever I look at my grandfather or my grandmother or my dad on my ofrenda, eternal life. How do we remember Jesus? Bread and wine. Every time. That bitch has eternal life. I just called Jesus a bitch. But yeah, like that's how it's like, you know, in whatever. And so Thich Nhat Hanh was saying like anytime you do a meditation or every time you hear a bell and take a breath and you come back to peace in a way that I taught you, I'm living through you.
Well, it's so funny. I couldn't sleep. I've been having a lot of anxiousness. I've got a lot of changes coming up in my life. I'm learning to do things I've never done before. Like just a lot of anxiety last night. Could not sleep. So I was reading an article and it's so funny, and y'all are going to make fun of me at first and then you're not. But I read this thing about Paul Walker's birthday. So Paul Walker died in a terrible car crash. He's from here. He died very close to here.
Do not remind me.
Right. So my good friend.
That was so sad. I watched the last scene in the Fast and Furious movies that he was in.
That's not him. It's his brother.
I know that, but
it's
still.
Just a CGI or whatever. Oh, so sad.
Yeah. Well, but the thing that I thought was really interesting is even this year. So I guess it's today so Lent, all this stuff has been in my head, right? Like exactly what you're saying, Josie, like what are the ripples? What are we trying to do? And I got in, you ever gotten like one of those things where you click on one thing and you keep going? I read a bunch of people's like things about him, and they were all people from the Fast and Furious franchise, but it was also his daughter. It was also his friends. By the way, his daughter's like 21, guys. And he was 40 when he died, which is my age. And I thought, what a beautiful tribute to a human that every year on his birthday, people write things, and they're not just writing like, it was great to be in a movie with you. It's, you changed my life. The daughter even has gotten all kinds of awards for who she is. And she says it's because of who my dad is. My dad was a beautiful person. My dad was this, I mean, yes, he had a franchise, like all this sort of stuff, but there's more to my dad than most people know. And I think about that, like when we think about death, it does infect and affect our work in a way that we don't take ourselves too seriously because we know we're not here forever. Mistakes that we make aren't permanent mistakes, right? I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. When I think I've made a mistake, poor Kevin has to get 17 phone calls, right? Like it's like the worst thing ever. I'm just, but if you have this idea, like this work, it's not actually the work that matters. It's how I am in this world and how I'm showing up and how I'm making space for myself and others and what is this life? Because I can't remember who said it, but it's not like what we do that people remember, but it's how we make them feel.
Yeah.
And I would also take it a step further. Like, at least what I'm thinking about my own life is like, I want to build something, to quote Hamilton, I want to build something that's going to outlive me or outlast me, I think is what he said. And the most beautiful sermon I heard about this was actually at the Pentecostal church from the pastor's wife on, I think it was Mother's Day. She was preaching, but she was talking about, and it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She was talking about the cathedrals and how for much of the time, the most beautiful cathedrals in Europe that we look at took hundreds of years to build. And we would also we need to talk about how they were built and who built them, et cetera, et cetera. And then colonization, et cetera. And I was thinking, and so now that I'm thinking about it, it's just like, I don't actually want to, like, we think that we want to have our life enshrined in some kind of structure after we're gone. We think that we want to do that, but I think it really is more about what, like, Thich Nhat Hanh said. It's just like, how are you helping, like, how are you passing on the piece that you learned? And if you're not learning peace, what the fuck are you doing?
I was on a mission trip, and it was right after Katrina hit, and there was this pastor who was amazing, and he had passed away, and his son, who was, I think at the time in his 40s, had come with us on this trip. And we were building, and it was great and whatever, and he missed a deadline, and he showed up late, and I was the foreman on it as well as the leader of this mission trip. And so he shows up late, and he's kind of being a dick to me. And one of the older guys that was on the trip with us, who's one of my dearest humans, said to him, he looked at him, and he was talking about how his dad and him, the guy was talking about how his dad and him were so similar. And Ted looked at him and said, there were hundreds of people at your dad's funeral because your dad knew how to care and love people. He said, I think from now on, you should start thinking about how to have hundreds of people at your funeral, not because you were popular, but because you cared and loved about people and you were respectful to people. You're nothing like your dad. Maybe it's time you started being like your dad. And like walked away.
Drag him.
But it was this moment of like, he said, you think hundreds of people were at your dad's funeral because he was popular. Here's why he was popular. He was popular because of the way that he made every individual feel. And in this moment,
because he was a good ass person.
Right. And I think, all of this, why do we have pictures? It's not that we're worshiping the dead. It's kind of a reminder that we, from dust we came, into dust we shall return.
Come on, Ash Wednesday.
We aren't forever, and that's kind of a weird gift because it helps with the anxiety, I think, a little bit. Like, because I take myself so damn seriously all the time. Like, what I am doing in this moment is so important. No, it's not. I mean, it is, but it's not.
I'm literally, my rule as of late is to follow the rule of ease. If it doesn't feel like, what is making, and this is like, I think like this is something I'm learning from following a lot of liberation theology, following a lot of beautiful, incredible, like, understanding that, like, we think about, like, like the quality of life matters is basically what I think I'm trying to sum up. Like, the quality of our life actually matters. The quality of my life matters. All of our lives matter. And I think that if you have a marginalized identity, it's like you are, especially a marginalized identity, especially within Christianity, but like even within everyone with evangelicalism, is taught to minimize that at any cost, for the sake of something later. And we don't make grief, like, grief is not of, like, it's like, I don't know, it's weird. It's a fear of feeling something. And I don't know. But what I found is that making, not to like bring it around, but making space for grief, making space to feel to feel the spirit, whatever that is to you. Like, there's nothing that can replace that. And whether you need to do that with a therapist, as like with a professional, whether you need to do that on your yoga mat, whether you need to do that in meditation, journaling, community groups, I don't know. You need something. You need someone. You need to go somewhere and do it. And I think that you should make a ritual out of it. Like, set up a picture in the house, leave some water, and spend time with the person. This is something I taught one of my clients recently who lost her father. I'm like, put a picture up. And she started, as soon as I told her to put a picture up, she started crying. I'm just like, I know that this is going to be uncomfortable, and I want you to do it anyways. Put a picture up, light a candle maybe, put out something that he liked to drink. Or just like, well, he was an alcoholic, so I'm just going to bring him water because I don't want to contribute to his alcoholism in the afterlife. And I'm like, that's valid. That's valid.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing.
It's really interesting.
Oh, sorry, Jose. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting. My cousin and I fought all the time. He was a really feisty one, that one. He allegedly was a Trump supporter, but I think he's just trying to be a contrarian. We talked about it a lot. But he always was, when I would bring over his sister would like to go through all of my earrings, like look at them one by one. And he would sometimes sit there and be like, you need to up your game. Like, we need to figure out how to make this shit better. And every time like I figure out a new way to make things better, I like think about like him sitting next to me, like saying like, yeah, that's right. You better be making that shit better. It's funny how like those little things in the before life can really come back when they're in the afterlife, like connecting with you, like, yeah, dude, use a fucking Dremel, like, what are you doing? Or
right,
glue that shit better or whatever.
It's like honestly, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, making space for death makes space for life, it feels like.
Yeah, because you're not fucking sad about it. It's just like, yeah, it's like, I'm not trying to.
It's part of it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't have to like be like, we don't have to be weird about the fact that we lost people. Like, death is only weird because people are weird about it. Ooh. Like, death is so natural. It happens every day. But like, we don't like, and like, people just don't know how to deal with it. You know how you deal with it? You fucking cry about it. You know how you deal with it? You tell your friends how fucking sad you are about it. You mourn, and then you mourn some more. And then you go to work, and then you go to church, and then you like, shake your ass, and then you, hook up with somebody and smoke some weed, and you cry about it some more. And then you get over it, and then 2 months later, you see something that reminds you of your dead dad, and you burst into tears again. For no apparent reason. And guess what?
Yep.
Then you keep going to work, and then you hang out with your friends again. Well, like, maybe not right now, but like post-COVID time. Maybe on Zoom. Maybe call your friends on Zoom. But that, like, grief is such a, like, grief is a lovely dance partner. They're fine. They're here for a while. It doesn't feel great at first, but just, like, if you want to feel better faster, learn the dance. Dead ass. Yep. Find your rituals, establish them, learn the dance, and then do it. And then once you know the first one, like, like every time there's a variation, but you know the basics. And so you can always move. Every single time death comes, it will hurt badly. And you will know how to move through it.
Because you moved through it instead of just avoiding it, which is what my background culturally does. And why every white person I know who went and saw Coco lost their mind. Oh my
gosh.
Because
Coco for me, same, was just... oof.
It was an opportunity for them to admit that for so long they've avoided the truth. All right, friends. So...
goddamn.
This has been a good one, guys. This is what... Wow.
We didn't know that... Season 3 off to a good start. You better make space for the deep shit, bitch. I don't know if I can say that on the podcast.
Sure. Whatevs. So, yeah. Kevin, what is one way that someone can make space for themselves or others as we close out this amazing time together?
Take a fucking nap. Honestly, if you're tired, take a nap. People are just like, oh, I need to prioritize rest. Take a nap. Take a nap when you feel tired. If you have the space to do that. Obviously, if you work like a 9 to 5, that sucks, but just like build it in. I had a friend of mine who builds in at 1 p.m. every day from 1 to 2, phones off, under the covers. Siesta. Reclaim it for yourself.
All right.
I usually, so nap more. That's my thing.
This has been a lovely episode already. I'm so glad to do this with 2 of my favorite humans. Kevin, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at thekevingarcia.com, across social media at thekevingarcia. My book is called Bad Theology Kills: Undoing Toxic Theology and Undoing Toxic Beliefs and Reclaiming Your Spiritual Authority. That's the title of the book. And you can get that at badtheologykills.com. And I'm single. And so if you are a man-ish kind of person who likes man-ish kind of people, you're kind of a dude. You don't have to be strictly a dude, because I'm not strictly a dude either. Slide into my DMs. Honestly, shoot your shot. Somebody actually did shoot their shot one time, and I said, thank you so much. That's not what I'm looking for.
Okay.
It was pretty explicit, and I kind of liked it, but I was like, that's not what I want. Anyways, that's how you can get a hold of me. I love you. That's it.
All right. So, Josie, how can folks get a hold of us? And I've got news. We are at 192 followers on our Instagram. And once we get to 200, we are raffling off a Maker's Box. But where can people find us? And what the hell is a Maker's Box?
Deep breath. And you can find us at makingspaces.com. You can find us on Instagram at Making Spaces Podcast. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/makingspacesPodcast, which is where you can sign up to get a quarterly Maker's Box for $25 a month. They go out January, April, August, October. I don't know, something like that. Quarterly. They go out quarterly. Yep. And in those, you get swag, you get tools, you get fun stuff. This last quarter was an apron, like a cool denim apron, and a multi-tool, prints, stickers, whatever we put in there. So at 200 followers,
it's cute shit.
We'll
get into it.
This comes out.
Yeah,
we will be raffling it off to one of our followers on the list. So all you have to do is follow us. No other terms and conditions apply.
And if you want to find me, I'm at RevSarahHeath. And if you want to find Josie, it's at Josie Takes the World on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. But don't go to Facebook because people are super mean to Josie on Facebook, and I don't like it, and I get real motherly.
I love it.
I live for the drama. Bring it on. Let me burn
then,
your...
friends. Wait, what?
Oh, I was going to strike Josie's enemies with a hex, but then you started doing your outro, so I'll stop and let you do that.
Okay, but just remember, they will still strike you with a hex. Until then, we'll see you next week where we will be
saving a space for you. Bye.
Bye.